It certainly wasn't pretty, but a win's a win. What are some of the lessons that we can take away from a victory against UConn? I'll give you 3 of them on today's show.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black, editor and publisher of Eagle Insider and host of this podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy at Prize Picks. So Saturday, we saw the Eagles defeat UConn in a close game. It was 21-14. I know a lot of, Mitch and I both, Mitch Wolf of Eagle Insider, who co-hosts on Friday, we both had projections of BC winning. He had it by 41. I had it by 28. And it wasn't that kind of game. It was a game dominated by Boston College, and we'll get into how they dominated, but they failed to capitalize and to end drives with positive outcomes. So let's dive into 3 different lessons we learned. If you want a full game recap of what happened, go back to yesterday's episode. We did a lot. Mitch and I did a live episode right after the game, 25 minutes. You can check out all our thoughts on the game. But this is about learning about some of the lessons that we can take away from this game. The first lesson that we had is that this running game is going to be dominant for the rest of the season. Now, UConn was not going to be much of a fight in terms of what they could do against BC. You play a team like UConn who's 1-6, you expect to be able to run all over them, and that's exactly what Kye Robichaux did. It was a Kye Robichaux and Alex Broom show. Now, Broom, you hadn't seen much of this year, but this was probably the best game that he's played all season. The smaller running back, he looked powerful. He had that swing pass for a touchdown. He also had 83 yards on the ground. He looked great, while Robichaux had 2 more touchdowns that puts him at 6 for the season with 112 yards rushing. My biggest gripe with the running game in this game, and this kind of goes into some of the other things we're talking about, is that they didn't lean heavily enough on this. I would have gone once Castellanos started to struggle. Once he looked like not like himself and whatever, we still don't know exactly what happened after the game. Hafley has said the same thing he said during the halftime and after the game, which was he wasn't feeling well. Don't know what that means. Could be a physical ailment, could be an injury, no clue. But you had an offensive line that UConn was getting blasted by. The offensive line dominated this game. And yeah, there was a few runs that were failed runs. But I don't understand why BC just didn't lean in on more running attacks. I loved what they were doing on the ground. We didn't get to see the explosives that I expected. I thought you'd see Robichaux or at least Castellanos, break a few for big gains, but it didn't seem like there were many to be had in this game. It was all 10 yards at a chunk, 5-6 yards here, 7 yards there. And that's methodical and great. It just never ended with a big touchdown. What I saw, especially when you got into the red zone or near the end, where things were getting a little bit more, getting close. I just wish they just kept handing the ball off. Power running game. Go to Dazball, go to Steve Adazio football here and just let those backs do everything that they needed to do, and that was a big gripe I had with the play calling. Was I just felt like a couple times BC went to pass the ball and it just wasn't working, especially at the beginning of the game. I wasn't a big fan of that. The second lesson that I want to talk about for BC has to do with the play of the defensive line. Now, this is the second game I've seen out of the defensive line where I thought they really dominated the game. Now, Cam Edwards, the running back for UConn, if you were listening to Mark Herzlich, you were thinking that this was the second coming of Derrick Henry. He had 80 yards in this game. Their passing attack, I think they had 100 yards. They totaled 220 yards. UConn's offense did nothing in this game. They scored a touchdown. They scored one touchdown where they actually drove the field. They had another where they were given a short field because of a Castellanos turnover, and that was it. They weren't able to do much of anything. Now, if you look at the Pro Football Focus scores, you'd think that this team played like crap. Going back to the offensive line, I thought they played well, and you look at the scores, you're like, they gave them like scores of like 50 for some of the offensive linemen. I don't get that. They also hammered guys like Neto Ekpala, who had about 6 pass rushes in this game. He didn't get any sacks, but every time he missed the quarterback, they counted as a missed tackle, which I get, but he also pressured the quarterback and caused, them to throw the ball fast. I thought Cam Horsley looked good. George Rooks had a pretty good game. Donovan Azaraku was the highest rated player in this game, and I don't think we talked about him at all on yesterday's episode. So this defensive line really did push UConn around. And when you look at the time of possession in this game, it really tells the tale of both point 1 and point 2. BC had the ball for 44 minutes. They held UConn to, I think, 35 to 40 plays, while BC had 85. BC dominated every statistic you can look at, whether you're looking at offensive stats, defensive stats, special teams. Mitch was telling me, if you guys remember that EPA stat, which is like expected points based off of the play of a certain unit. He told me that UConn had an EPA of -11 on special teams. That their special teams was so bad that they had a -11 EPA. That's terrible. So BC beat UConn in every single category that you'd be looking for, but they missed on a big one, and we'll get that in a second. But I want to say that I thought the defensive line had a really good game. They dominated a much undersized UConn offensive line. They had 0 sacks, which, again, you're like, why isn't this happening? But I look at how uncomfortable Roberson, their quarterback, was for UConn, and you could see how well they played. And then like you look at their drive summaries of what they were able to do, and you can see like BC, they dominated on the defensive side of the ball, other than that one drive that ended with a touchdown. I can't complain about that. I think the defensive line is improving. It was the second best run defense score that Pro Football Focus gave them on the season. The best one was against NIU, which is kind of crazy, but okay. So in our final segment, I have in our second segment, I have a much longer discussion that I want to talk about for our final point on Thomas Castellanos. I want to look at what he did, what we learned about him, and where his future should go from here with BC. We'll get into that in just a moment. Now, the big playmaker of the weekend had to have been Kye Robichaux. Kye Robichaux scored 2 touchdowns again for the second straight game. And just like Kye Robichaux, Athletic Brewing Company has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good. Their beers are great tasting and award-winning and beat out full-strength beers in global competitions. And as I've always said, they make 50 styles of craft non-alcoholic brews, including IPAs, golden sours, and more. And they're always trying new stuff, so you got to check out Athletic Brewing Company to find out what they have. They're great for everything, whether it's watching a big football game or just hanging out in your backyard or doing yard work. It's perfect, and they give you no hangovers. That's awesome. So what you need to do is go to athleticbrewingcompany.com. Use promo code Locked On to get 15% off your first online order. That's LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all time. Passion and drive and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is what keeps your ride or die going. And with eBay Motors, has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, excuse me, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need, the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. This is Locked On BC. I am your host, AJ Black. And we are talking about our lessons learned. And before we get into our final moment, just a reminder, this is a short week for BC. They have Syracuse on Friday night at the Dome. For me, I'm kind of excited about this. I'm really pumped to have my Saturday off so I can go do something else and get the game going at nighttime. I think it's going to be a fun game to watch. BC opened as a 3-point favorite, which is interesting, especially the game on the road. So we'll have coverage on that as the week goes on. Now, the most polarizing player in this game has to be Thomas Castellanos, the quarterback. He had one of his most off games we've seen. You know, he's a chaotic quarterback at times. You take the good with the bad, but most of the time the good outweighs the bad. This was not one of those games. He came out really looking inaccurate. Then something happened at halftime. He had the fumble where he just lost the ball out of his hand for the second time in 3 weeks. And then at halftime, he didn't come back out, and they put Emmett Morehead out, halfway saying that he didn't feel well, whatever that means. And then played more like a pocket quarterback for the rest of the game. He made some plays, and he also had a few runs, so it wasn't like he was completely immobile, but he wasn't the same like dynamic runner that we saw, especially against like Georgia Tech, Army, and Virginia. So what happened? What did we learn about Thomas Castellanos? Well, I think as much as we get crazy about him, and believe me, I'm one of the biggest cheerleaders of this guy. It's fun to watch a good player, and he's a good player and a lot of fun to watch. You got to temper expectations at times. This was only his 6th or 7th start of the season. He hasn't started before that since high school. So yeah, he's going to make a lot of crazy good plays, but as we've seen time and time again, BC and Robichaux, and Castellanos, he's going to make big plays, but he's also going to make mistakes, and he made more mistakes, and it almost cost them in this game. You know, when he came out and he was sailing his passes, I was like, oh God, just go back to what you're doing against Army. I honestly don't care. You know, a lot of folks are like, you got to pass the ball more. You got to do this. Honestly, just score points. Who cares how you do it? You know, I don't care if a team is struggling to pass, if they just run the ball all day. If you're scoring the points, it doesn't matter. Scoring points is scoring points. It's not a style point game. It's a points game. But Castellanos, he was struggling all over the place. He just couldn't get things going. And I think what we're going to hope to see, and I think we've already started to see it in different weeks, is that he just is going to have to continue to learn and develop. You know, hopefully he whatever happened, he's going to figure out what happened in that game, watch the film, figure out what he did wrong, and talk to the coaches, tell them listen to what they had to say and get that going. Because, you know, he's a sophomore in college. This is his first year playing, and he's going to have those times where he's going to make a bad throw or he's going to make a poor decision. And it's what he does after that play, which is going to define him as a quarterback. One of the biggest plays that I was talking to my father-in-law about this last night was, I think it was the first half, and he ran for a first down. And he did that thing where you hold the ball like 5 feet in front of you, and it was completely unguarded. And he got the first down, but Jeff Halfley, you could tell, was furious with him for that play. He pulled him aside right after that and was giving him an earful. Those are the kinds of like little mental things that he's just going to have to learn as he goes along. You know, he's a very confident kid. And you know, a lot of these kids are watching guys like Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes who do the exact same thing, but they know when to do it, right? I think of Castellanos. I think of where things are going to go from here. Now, hopefully, from this game, whatever happened on Saturday that caused him not to feel well, I'm going to keep putting those in parentheses, is in the past. Maybe it was a quick thing. It could be an illness. It could be a cramps, from dehydration. It could be a lower body injury. We saw him with a sleeve on his leg. There's a million different things that could have happened. We have no clue what happened there. But next game is in a dome. Domes usually play fast. That is a good thing for BC. I have not looked at the statistics yet for Syracuse against the run. I'm sure Mitch probably has piles and piles of statistics to look at. But my biggest thing that we learned from this game is, my God, he better be healthy. I saw what Emmett Morehead did, and he was fine. I didn't think he was anything impressive, but he came off the bench and, he moved the team reasonably well. They didn't ask him to do a whole lot, but this team is very different with Emmett Morehead than it is with Thomas Castellanos. BC needs Castellanos against Syracuse. We just got to hope he's healthy. I don't expect to hear from the coaches this week. I'm sure on Monday, we're going to get Jeff Hafley saying, we're hopeful. We're hopeful. That's what we always hear. And then it's always gamemanship with injury stuff. So we never get the full story. We never know what's going to happen. George Takis was injured, and of course, because practices are closed, no one knows about it. Patrick Garwo's still out. You got guys, Kari Johnson's playing with a club on his hand. None of this stuff is reported because no one can see any of it. So it's guarded. And so whatever's going on with Castellanos, I guarantee you we will not know anything until Friday. I get the sense that we shouldn't worry about it, but I hope he's at 100%. We need 100% Castellanos against Syracuse because that's a big game, and BC wins that, they're bowl eligible. That's what I think everyone is hoping for, and it would be quite the nice way to start the month of November with a win like that. Now, in our final segment, I want to get into hockey. BC had two big games this weekend against the Michigan State Spartans, and I want to talk about what I saw. What I heard about, all the big news and updates from that game, because those were big as well. Now, Prize Picks is the most fun I've had, winning up to 25 times my money this football season. You just select two or more players, pick or more or less their projected stats, and place your entry. Prize Picks is so easy to use. You just open up the app. You see a whole bunch of statistics you're looking for, whether you're looking at running backs, you're like, I hope I'm thinking Ramondre Stevenson is going to get more than 75 yards. Boom, you get that. You can look at basketball right now. Derek White, 12.5 points, or Jaylen Brown, 19.5 points. Go with the over and under on both of those players. You watch the games. It's so easy to use. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. So go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code lockedoncollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code lockedoncollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Locked On BC, I am your host, AJ Black. We're wrapping things up here on Locked On BC. And I want to talk to you a little bit about college hockey. We'll get back into the hockey talk. Now, if you haven't been over to Eagle Insider, we have BC Hockey Blogger now as our staff writer, and he is the preeminent hockey guy. And took us a little convincing to get him over there. So all this stuff is behind VIP walls, but I'm telling you, pay $1 for this first month. Check out his work if you want to learn about college hockey. This guy is at every game, has detailed analysis on everything, and you're going to learn a ton about BC hockey, and you should, because now they are at 5-1 with 2 ranked wins this weekend against the Michigan State Spartans. Now, on Friday night, it was a much closer game. BC wins the game 6-4, and Oscar Jelvik, I hope I get his name right, scored a pair of goals, and they pulled away in the third period to win 6-4. And you saw a ton of really good offense from the Eagles. 7 points from the freshman line. Now, we've talked about this on our podcast. BC really killed it on the recruiting trail this year with 3 guys that were now first round draft picks in the NHL draft. Will Smith, who's getting jiggy with it, with 1 goal, 2 assists, and 3 points. Ryan Leonard with 1 goal and 1 assist, and Gabe Peralt with 2 assists. They had 7 points in this game. These were 3 of the top, like if you're looking at like in terms of football recruiting terms, these are 5-star recruits, all 3 of them. And they had an amazing game. BC took care of business in that one. And then on Saturday, they just dominated. It was a complete domination from BC, who went out and defeated them 5-1 with Kata Gauthier and Jack Malone each scoring a pair of goals. Gauthier is a draft pick of the Philadelphia Flyers. He, obviously he's been around. This is his second year. And again, 5-1. Jacob Fowler, who, again, if you want to use recruiting terms, he's a 4 or 5-star goaltender, had 38 saves as a true freshman. So BC is now 5-1. And they played all, they played all of these games in front of a absolutely bananas Conti Forum. You had blackouts, whiteouts in the first couple of weeks. This time you had costume parties and sellouts to every game. BC's breaking records. The fans are so excited for these games. And the student section's been crazy. Say what you will about them at the football game, but the hockey games, they have been out of their minds, and it's made it one of the best environments for college hockey. And it's hard to not get super pumped about this team. Now, from here, BC Hockey is going to go to start their Hockey East play with back-to-back games against UMass Lowell. Always a tough out for BC. They play them home and home starting Friday, Conti Forum at 7, and then at Lowell at 6 p.m. on Saturday night. All those games can be streamed on ESPN Plus if you have it. So if you're looking for some college hockey, and they're playing very, very well. Now, in terms of other teams that play this weekend, there's the super secret probation scrimmage by BC based basketball. I don't know what happened there. It was super secret. It was close to the media. It was close to the public. I believe they were playing Brown, and I've heard buzz that they played well and won by, I think, 10 points. But again, this is all unconfirmed stuff because BC can't talk about it. They can't talk about it, or they choose not to talk about it. I don't know what they're going with. I've seen other schools, and I swear they're having exhibition games that they're promoting, and you can see statistics and stuff on. But the big news that I've heard from their open media days is Quentin Post is 100% healthy, which is great. And that Donald Hand is practicing, which is also great. This is a guard that should be playing well. You've got some really good things going on here, and there's a lot of really positive buzz. They had Al Skinner there. Al Skinner's working with Earl Grant. How exciting is that? You had one of the best coaches in BC history coming back to work with your coach, that they know each other from their time and working in South Carolina, the South Carolina schools. Al Skinner's been around. It's awesome. The buzz about this team is getting really big, and we'll talk about more about this basketball team this week as they're getting ready to open their season against a Fairfield team that just fired their head coach. So that should be a good one to start off the year. Well, we're going to wrap things up here. This is AJ Black. Thank you all so much. Sorry, Josh Dougherty says it's Yelvik. I apologize. Hockey's not my forte, and I didn't have a pronunciation guide in front of me. So it's Yelvik. I got it. So we'll be talking more about college hockey, college basketball, and the game against Syracuse with 6 wins on the line. Thank you all so much for listening. Make sure you hit that like button on this podcast. It does help people find us. And if you're if you're listening on a podcast app, hit 5 stars. Give us a quick review. It helps other people find us. We're Locked On BC. We are the only podcast that covers Boston College every day. This is your team every day.